The reluctant guardian. Lieutenant Zoe Nakamura stood at the viewport of the transport vessel Helios Dawn, arms crossed tightly over her chest as she watched the stars streak by. At 34, she wore her military career like armor, her short black hair maintained in a perfect regulation cut, her posture unyielding even in solitude. The small scar running along her jawline twitched as she clenched her teeth. "You're brooding again," said a voice behind her. Zoe didn't turn. "I'm contemplating, Tanner." "There's a difference." Commander Ethan Tanner, her friend since Flight Academy and current first officer, moved to stand beside her. "You've been contemplating since Admiral Wallace gave us these orders." "Because they make no sense," Zoe replied, finally turning to face him. 7 years with Galactic Transport Division, and suddenly I'm playing courier for some classified passenger? No information, no briefing, just pick up package at Lunar Base, deliver to Vega Station, ask no questions. Tanner shrugged. "Maybe it's diplomatic. We've been at this border skirmish with the Tarsus Collective for months. Could be a peace envoy. Then why not use a diplomatic vessel?" Zoe tapped her console, bringing up their flight path. "And why am I specifically requested?" "I transport cargo, not VIPs. Your impeccable safety record? Your charming personality?" Tanner grinned, dodging Zoe's half-hearted swipe. Their banter was interrupted by the comm system. "Lieutenant Nakamura, we're approaching Lunar Base. Your passenger's shuttle is preparing to dock." Zoe straightened her uniform jacket. "Time to meet our mystery guest." The docking bay was eerily quiet as Zoe and Tanner waited. A sleek silver shuttle, unmarked and clearly designed for stealth rather than comfort, eased into position. Its airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. 2 security officers in unmarked gray uniforms emerged first, their expressions professionally blank. Between them walked a slender figure in a hooded cloak of deep indigo material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Lieutenant Nakamura," one of the officers addressed her. "Your passenger, as ordered." Zoe stepped forward, extending a hand in formal greeting. "Welcome aboard the Helios Dawn. I'm Lieutenant Zoe Nakamura, your captain for this journey." The hooded figure hesitated, then slowly reached out. As their hands met, Zoe felt an unusual warmth and the faintest tingling sensation against her skin. The hood tilted back slightly, revealing a face that made Zoe momentarily forget protocol. The woman, if she could be called that, had features that were almost human but subtly different. Her skin was pale with an opalescent quality that seemed to catch light at impossible angles. But most striking were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and a deep violet that seemed to shimmer with inner light. "I am Lyra," the being said, her voice melodic with an accent Zoe couldn't place. "Thank you for your assistance, Lieutenant." The security officers handed Zoe a sealed data chip. "Her documentation and coordinates. For your eyes only." Without further explanation, they retreated to their shuttle, leaving Zoe alone with her unusual passenger. "I'll show you to your quarters," Zoe said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite her curiosity. As they walked through the corridors, she noticed crew members stealing glances at Lyra, whose graceful movement seemed almost liquid, as if she weighed less than she should. "Our journey to Vega Station should take approximately 5 standard days," Zoe explained. "Your quarters are equipped with all necessary amenities. If you require anything." "I require little," Lyra interrupted softly. "And I prefer solitude." They reached the VIP quarters, and Zoe activated the door panel. Lyra stepped inside, finally lowering her hood to reveal cascading hair of pale silver with subtle luminescent strands woven throughout. In the privacy of the room, she also loosened her cloak, revealing what appeared to be intricate patterns beneath her skin, delicate lines of soft blue light that traced along her visible forearms like luminous veins. Zoe tried not to stare. "The ship's communication system is at your disposal should you need anything." Lyra turned, studying Zoe with those unsettling violet eyes. You have questions. It wasn't a question. Zoe hesitated, then nodded. Many. But my orders were clear. As were mine. A ghost of a smile touched Lyra's lips. Perhaps we will both find answers before we reach Vega Station. The door closed between them, leaving Zoe with the distinct impression that her simple transport mission had just become infinitely more complicated. 2 days into their journey, the Helios Dawn cruised smoothly through a quiet sector of space. Lyra had remained in her quarters, emerging only for brief walks around the observation deck during off-peak hours. The crew had quickly adapted to her presence, maintaining a respectful distance. Zoe was in her office reviewing supply manifests when the alarm blared. Captain to the bridge, emergency. She was moving before Tanner's voice finished, sprinting through corridors and arriving breathless. Report, she demanded, taking in the tense faces of her crew. Unidentified vessels, Lieutenant, the tactical officer, Reza, responded. 3 ships, approaching fast from the starboard quadrant. They're not responding to hails. The main screen showed 3 predatory-looking ships with distinctive angular designs that weren't familiar to Zoe. Shields up, she ordered. Defensive posture only. Before her orders could be fully implemented, the ship rocked violently as energy weapons struck their hull. Shields at 65%, Reza shouted. Return fire, Zoe commanded, gripping her chair as another blast hit them. The Helios wasn't a warship, but it carried defensive weaponry. Their return fire struck one of the attacking vessels, causing it to veer off. They're targeting our engines, Tanner reported grimly. Zoe realized immediately, they don't want to destroy us. They want to board. Her thoughts flew to Lyra. Was she the target? The ship shuddered again, and the lights flickered. Engine hit. We're losing power to the main drive, Reza called out. Zoe made a split-second decision. Divert all power to forward shields and weapons. Prepare for emergency jump. Lieutenant, with the engines damaged, Tanner began. I know the risks. Do it. As the crew scrambled to comply, the bridge door slid open, and Lyra stepped in. She'd abandoned her cloak, revealing a form-fitting suit of an unfamiliar silvery material. The blue patterns beneath her skin, not clothing but part of her physiology, traced intricate designs across her visible skin, pulsing with increasing intensity. Lieutenant, she said calmly despite the chaos, those ships are here for me. Zoe met her gaze steadily. Who are you? Really? Someone who can help if you'll let me. Before Zoe could respond, another blast rocked the ship, plunging the bridge into darkness before emergency lighting bathed everything in dim red. Main power down, Tanner reported. Emergency jump is no longer an option. Zoe looked at Lyra, whose strange markings seemed to pulse brighter in the dimness. I hope you have a plan. Lyra's lips curved into a slight smile. Always, Lieutenant. Everyone, battle stations, Zoe ordered. Tanner, get damage control teams to the engine room. We need those engines back online yesterday. Lyra approached the navigation console. I need access to your ship's systems. Zoe hesitated only briefly before nodding to the navigator, who stepped aside. Lyra's fingers moved across the controls with surprising familiarity, her blue markings pulsing in rhythm with her movements. What are you doing? Zoe asked, watching as unfamiliar sequences flashed across the screen. Creating a blind spot, Lyra replied without looking up. Lieutenant, when I give the word, I need you to cut all remaining power. Everything except life support. That would leave us completely vulnerable, Zoe protested. Lyra's violet eyes met hers. Trust me. Something in that gaze, confidence, perhaps, or simply desperation, made Zoe nod. On your mark. Lyra continued her work, the blue markings on her skin pulsing more intensely. 3, 2, 1, now. Cut power, Zoe ordered. The bridge plunged into darkness again, even the emergency lights fading. Only the faint glow of Lyra's markings provided any illumination, casting eerie blue shadows across the faces of the crew. "What now?" Zoe whispered. "We wait," Lyra whispered back. "They can't see us." "Our shields are down," Reza hissed. "They'll tear through the hull." "No," Lyra said confidently. "They won't." True to her word, the attacking ships suddenly seemed confused. Their coordinated approach faltered, and they began moving erratically, clearly searching for a target that had seemingly vanished. "They're scanning for us," Lyra explained softly. "But they won't find us. I've masked our signature." "How?" Zoe demanded. Lyra merely smiled, her blue markings dimming slightly. "A gift of my people." For tense minutes, they watched through the viewport as the hostile vessels circled, growing increasingly frantic in their search patterns. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the ships regrouped and jumped away. "They're gone," Reza confirmed as power gradually returned to the bridge. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crew, but Zoe wasn't celebrating yet. She fixed Lyra with an intense stare. "My quarters. Now. I think it's time you told me exactly who you are and why we just had to play dead in the middle of neutral space." As the damaged ship limped toward the nearest repair facility, the temperature began to drop noticeably. With power systems compromised, environmental controls were among the first non-essential systems to be rationed. In Zoe's quarters, Lyra sat across from her, the blue patterns beneath her skin pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. "I am Lyra Val, daughter of the first resonator of the celestial harmony," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "My people are known as the Lumina." Zoe leaned back, processing this. The Lumina were rarely mentioned in Alliance briefings, a highly advanced but reclusive species known more through rumor than fact. "The Lumina don't interact with other species," Zoe said. "Why are you on my ship?" "Because my father was assassinated 2 weeks ago," Lyra replied, her violet eyes dimming slightly. "And I am next in line to lead." The temperature continued to drop as repairs progressed slowly. Within hours, crew members were moving about in thermal gear, their breath visible in the chilled air. Zoe made her rounds, checking on repairs and ensuring her people were coping with the conditions. When she returned to her quarters, she found Lyra there, wrapped in a standard-issue thermal blanket that seemed too bulky for her slender frame. Despite the covering, she was visibly shivering. "Are you all right?" Zoe asked. "My species maintains a higher core temperature than humans," Lyra explained between trembling breaths. "This cold affects me more severely." Zoe frowned. "Why didn't you say something? We could adjust environmental controls in your quarters." "No," Lyra shook her head firmly. "I won't receive special treatment while your crew suffers." As the night cycle approached, the temperature dropped even further. Zoe couldn't sleep, partly from the cold but mostly from concern for her ship and mysterious passenger. She was reviewing repair reports when a soft knock came at her door. Lyra stood there, her luminescent markings dimmed to almost nothing, her lips tinged with an alarming blue. "My quarters heating failed completely," she explained, her voice weak. "I tried to repair it, but—" Without hesitation, Zoe guided her inside. From her emergency kit, she retrieved a self-heating sleeping bag designed for extreme conditions. "This has its own power source," she explained, activating it. "It won't drain the ship's systems." Lyra eyed it gratefully. As the sleeping bag began to warm, she hesitated, then said something that caught Zoe completely off guard. "Perhaps we could share? Body heat is more efficient, and the bag appears large enough for two." Zoe felt her eyebrows rise involuntarily. "That's not exactly protocol." A faint smile touched Lyra's blue-tinged lips. "I won't report you to your superiors if you don't." Zoe should have refused. It was inappropriate, unprofessional, and potentially complicated given who Lyra was. But the alien woman was clearly suffering, and the practical part of her brain acknowledged the logic. "All right," she said finally. "Just until your temperature stabilizes." When the indicator light turned green, signaling optimal temperature, Zoe gestured for Lyra to get in first. To her shock, the alien began removing her outer garments. "What are you doing?" Zoe asked, alarmed. Lyra paused, looking confused. "Direct skin contact provides the most efficient heat transfer. Is this not common knowledge among humans?" Zoe felt her face warm despite the cold air. "It is, but it's not something done casually between people who barely know each other." Lyra considered this. "By my people's standards, you are risking your life and your ship to protect me. That creates a bond of significance." Before Zoe could respond, Lyra had removed her clothing, revealing her slender form marked completely by those fascinating blue patterns that pulsed beneath her skin like living circuitry. Zoe averted her eyes, though not before noticing how the markings seemed to flow across Lyra's body like rivers of light, converging at her heart and branching outward. "Your markings," she said, keeping her gaze fixed on the wall. "They're biological?" "Yes," Lyra replied, slipping into the sleeping bag. "We call them luminal lines. They appear during adolescence and grow more complex throughout our lives. They're both decorative and functional." "Functional how?" Zoe asked, still not looking at her. "They help us channel and control energy. Both internal and external." There was a pause. "The sleeping bag is quite warm now. Will you join me?" With a sigh of resignation, Zoe removed her uniform down to her underclothes and carefully slipped into the sleeping bag beside Lyra. The warmth was immediate and welcome after hours in the freezing ship. Lyra's skin was surprisingly warm now, and the blue lines on her body provided a soft ambient glow. "Better?" Zoe asked. "Much," Lyra murmured. "Your species generates remarkable heat." They lay in silence for a while, the only sound the soft hum of the heating element and the distant creaks of the damaged ship. "Lieutenant," Lyra said eventually, her voice drowsy. "Yes? Thank you. Not just for the warmth, but for trusting me. Few would defy attackers on the word of someone they barely know." Zoe turned her head slightly to look at Lyra. Their faces were inches apart, those violet eyes luminous in the dim light. "I follow my instincts," Zoe said. "And my instincts say you're worth protecting." Something changed in Lyra's expression, a softening, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. Her blue markings pulsed slightly faster. "Among my people," she said softly, "such protection creates a bond that goes beyond duty. It is sacred." The implication hung in the air between them. Zoe found herself acutely aware of Lyra's presence beside her, not just as a passenger or diplomatic package, but as a person. A fascinating, beautiful person who looked at her with something that transcended their different species and worlds. As the Helios Dawn drifted through space, its systems slowly healing, Zoe Nakamura realized that her simple transport mission had evolved into something she couldn't have anticipated, a connection that felt, against all logic, like destiny. Luminous trust. Morning cycle aboard the Helios Dawn brought minimal improvements. The engineering team had restored partial power to essential systems, but the ship remained vulnerable. Zoe found herself constantly checking the long-range scanners, expecting their attackers to return at any moment. She hadn't seen Lyra since their shared night in the sleeping bag. The alien had retreated to her quarters as soon as the heating systems were partially restored, leaving Zoe with conflicted emotions and unanswered questions. "Engine repairs are progressing, but slowly," Tanner reported, joining her on the bridge. "At this rate, we'll limp into Vega Station 3 days behind schedule." "If we make it at all," Zoe muttered, studying the navigation chart. "We're still in contested space. Too exposed." Tanner hesitated. "The crew is talking about our passenger." Those ships weren't random pirates. They knew exactly who we were carrying. I know, Zoe said. And I intend to find out why. She found Lyra in the observation lounge, gazing at the stars. Without her cloak, the blue patterns beneath her skin were clearly visible, pulsing softly like a second heartbeat. We need to talk, Zoe said, taking a seat beside her. Lyra turned, those violet eyes searching Zoe's face. You have questions. Those ships will return. I need to know what we're facing. Zoe leaned forward. You said your father was assassinated. By whom? Lyra's markings dimmed slightly. There's a faction within the Lumina called the Purists. They believe we should withdraw completely from galactic affairs, that contact with other species dilutes our essence. Her voice hardened. My father believed in connection, in sharing our knowledge. They killed him for it. And now they're after you, Zoe said. It wasn't a question. Yes. I'm to meet my father's allies at Vega Station, where I'll be escorted home to claim leadership. Lyra hesitated. If I don't arrive, the Purists will control our civilization's future. And what would that mean for the Alliance? War, Lyra said simply. The Purists fear humanity most of all. Your adaptability, your resilience, they see these qualities as threatening. If they gain control, they'll use our technology against the Alliance, beginning with humanity. Before Zoe could respond, the ship's alarms blared. Captain to the bridge, emergency. Tanner's voice echoed through the comm. They arrived on the bridge together to find the crew in controlled panic. It's not our previous attackers, Reza reported. Different signature. A warship, Alliance Registry, the ASV Interceptor. Zoe frowned. We haven't sent any distress calls. They're hailing us, Tanner said. On screen. The view screen revealed a stern-faced man with commander's insignia. Lieutenant Nakamura, this is Commander Vaughn of the ASV Interceptor. We detected your damaged vessel and are here to assist. Thank you, Commander, Zoe replied carefully. We're handling repairs and continuing to Vega Station as ordered. Your orders have changed, Vaughn stated. We're to take custody of your passenger immediately. Prepare for docking. The transmission ended before Zoe could respond. She turned to find Lyra's face drained of color, her markings pulsing erratically. Lieutenant, Lyra whispered urgently, we cannot trust them. Why not? Their alliance. My father warned me. The Purists have infiltrated Alliance military ranks. They could be using this ship as cover. Zoe studied Lyra's face, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she made her decision. Tanner, initiate emergency undocking procedures. Divert all remaining power to engines. Lieutenant? Tanner looked surprised but moved to comply. We're continuing to Vega as ordered, Zoe explained. If Commander Vaughn has legitimate business with our passenger, he can take it up with Admiral Wallace when we arrive. As predicted, the Interceptor immediately attempted to override their systems, then tried physical measures to prevent them from breaking away. Reverse thrusters, full power, Zoe ordered. Burn through our reserves if necessary. The Helio strained against the larger vessel's hold, its damaged hull groaning under the stress. For a moment, it seemed they were trapped. Then, with a violent lurch, they broke free, the sudden momentum sending everyone stumbling. Get us out of here, maximum speed. As they accelerated away, the Interceptor gave chase, its superior engines quickly closing the gap. They're charging weapons, Reza reported. Evasive maneuvers, Zoe ordered. Head for that nebula, the radiation should mask our signature. As they raced toward the swirling gases of a nearby nebula, Lyra stepped closer to Zoe's command chair. Thank you, she said softly, for trusting me. Zoe nodded grimly. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get you to Vega in one piece. The Helios plunged into the nebula, its sensors struggling to penetrate the ionized gas. The interceptor fell back, unwilling to risk damage to its more sophisticated systems. "We've lost them for now," Tanner reported. "But we can't stay here indefinitely. The radiation will compromise our remaining systems." "Options?" Zoe asked. Lyra approached the navigation console. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, Zoe nodded. Lyra's fingers danced across the controls, inputting a complex sequence that recalibrated the sensors. Suddenly, the view screen shifted, revealing what appeared to be a structure hidden within the nebula, a small station constructed of a material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "A Lumina sanctuary," she explained, her markings pulsing with excitement. "One of my father's secret outposts. It can repair your ship and provide protection until we're ready to continue." "You didn't think to mention this earlier?" Zoe asked, raising an eyebrow. "I wasn't certain it would still be operational," Lyra admitted. Weighing their limited options, Zoe made her decision. "Set course for the outpost, but approach with caution. Weapons ready." As they drew closer, the station seemed to awaken, subtle lights appearing along its surface. A transmission came through, not words but a series of musical tones that made the bridge crew exchange confused glances. Lyra stepped forward, responding with similar tones that emanated not from the communication system but from her own body, her blue markings pulsing in rhythm with the sounds. "They recognize me," she explained. "We're being granted access." A docking bay opened, revealing a cavernous space within. The Helios glided into the sanctuary, the bay doors closing behind them. When the airlock cycled open, they were greeted by 3 Lumina, tall, slender beings with the same luminescent skin as Lyra, though their markings varied in color and pattern. They bowed deeply, their markings pulsing in synchronized patterns. Lyra stepped forward, her own markings responding in kind. No words were exchanged, but Zoe could sense a complex communication occurring through light and subtle movements. Finally, Lyra turned to her. "This is Theron, the station commander. They welcome us and offer assistance with repairs." Zoe nodded respectfully to the tallest Lumina, whose markings were a deep green. "We're grateful for your help." Theron studied her with large, iridescent eyes. "The human speaks," they observed, their voice melodic and slightly surprised. "Fascinating. Humans communicate primarily through vocalization," Lyra explained. "Their light patterns are undeveloped." Theron approached Zoe, circling her with undisguised curiosity. "May I?" they asked, reaching toward her. Before Zoe could respond, Theron's fingers brushed against her temple. A strange sensation washed over her, like a whisper directly into her mind, conveying not words but impressions: welcome, curiosity, respect. "Thank you," Zoe managed, slightly disoriented by the experience. "Your ship requires extensive repairs," Theron stated. "It will take time. You will stay among us until it is complete." As they were led deeper into the station, Zoe noticed the environment changing, becoming warmer, more humid, with lighting that pulsed subtly in patterns that seemed to follow their movements. The few Lumina they passed all stopped to observe her with undisguised interest, their markings flashing in what she assumed was their equivalent of whispered conversations. "They've never seen a human before," Lyra explained quietly. "You're quite the novelty." They were shown to adjacent chambers, spacious rooms with furnishings that seemed to grow organically from the walls and floors. "Rest," Theron said. "We will begin repairs to your vessel. Later, there will be a gathering to honor the daughter of the first resonator." After they departed, Zoe explored her chamber, finding it both alien and strangely comfortable. The bed, if it could be called that, was a concave depression in the floor filled with something like water but more viscous, maintaining its shape when she cautiously pressed a hand into it. A soft chime announced Lyra's arrival. She had changed into a flowing garment that left her shoulders and arms bare, her blue markings more prominent against the pale fabric. Is your accommodation suitable? She asked. It's different, Zoe admitted. But not unpleasant. Lyra smiled, approaching where Zoe stood. I wanted to thank you again for trusting me, for protecting me. Few would have defied Alliance command on the word of an alien. I follow my instincts, Zoe said. And my orders were to get you to Vega safely. Is that the only reason? Lyra asked, stepping closer until Zoe could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, see the subtle pulsing of her markings. Zoe swallowed hard. Since their intimate moment in the sleeping bag, she'd been acutely aware of Lyra, not just as a passenger or even as an alien princess, but as a woman. A beautiful, fascinating woman who looked at her with undisguised interest. No, she admitted. Not the only reason. Lyra's markings brightened, and she reached up to touch Zoe's face, her fingers tracing the line of her jaw. Among my people, life forces are shared through contact. The closer the contact, the deeper the connection. Is that why you suggested sharing the sleeping bag? Zoe asked, her voice rougher than she intended. Partly, Lyra acknowledged. But also because I was curious about humans. About you. Her hand slid down to rest against Zoe's chest, directly over her heart. Your heart beats so strongly, so differently from ours. Zoe covered Lyra's hand with her own. Lyra, I'm not sure. When Illumina chooses a companion, Lyra interrupted softly, it is not just for physical pleasure, but for the harmonizing of life forces. It is sacred. The implication hung between them, heavy with meaning. And is that what you're suggesting? Zoe asked carefully. Lyra's violet eyes met hers, unwavering. I am suggesting that what began in your sleeping bag need not end there. That perhaps our meeting was not merely chance, but something more. Before Zoe could respond, a distant alarm echoed through the station. Lyra's markings flashed with alarm. They found us, she whispered. Zoe was immediately alert. The interceptor? Worse, Lyra said, her voice tight with fear. That's the purest signal. They're coming. They raced to the station's command center, where Theron and other Lumina worked frantically at control panels. 3 vessels approaching, Theron reported, their green markings pulsing rapidly. Lumina design, but weaponized. How did they find us? Zoe demanded. The radiation interference that hides us also limits our detection range, Theron explained. They were likely already in the nebula, searching. Can we defend the station? Lyra asked. Theron's markings dimmed. This is a research outpost, not a military installation. Our defenses are minimal. Zoe turned to Tanner, who had joined them. What's the status of the Helios? Repairs are maybe 40% complete, he reported grimly. We have basic propulsion, but shields are still down. Then we run, Zoe decided. We get Lyra out of here before they arrive. No. Lyra's voice was suddenly stronger, more resonant. I'm tired of running. She stepped forward, placing her hands on a crystalline console in the center of the command room. Theron, does this station still have the resonance chamber? Theron looked surprised, their markings flashing rapidly. Yes, but it hasn't been used in decades. The energy required. I have the energy, Lyra interrupted. I am my father's daughter. Theron hesitated, then nodded. This way. As they hurried through the station's corridors, Zoe caught Lyra's arm. What are you planning? Something my father taught me, Lyra said, her markings pulsing with determination. The purists fear connection with other species because of what it might reveal, that we are not so different after all. The resonance chamber was a large spherical room at the heart of the station. Its walls were covered in crystalline structures that seemed to vibrate slightly, creating harmonics at the edge of Zoe's hearing. What is this place? She asked. A place of connection, Lyra explained, moving to the center of the room. The Lumina once used these chambers to share consciousness across great distances. Share consciousness? Zoe repeated, uncomfortable with the concept. Not to invade or control, Lyra assured her, but to understand. To experience another's perspective, their emotions, their way of being. Theron interrupted. The purest vessels will be within weapons range in minutes. Lyra turned to Zoe, her violet eyes intense. I need your help. The chamber requires two life forces in harmony, one Lumina, one of another species. What exactly would I be doing? Joining your consciousness with mine, Lyra said simply. Together, we can create a resonance field large enough to encompass the purest ships. And then what? They'll experience what I experience, the truth that connection doesn't diminish us, but enlarges us. Zoe hesitated. This sounds intimate. It is, Lyra admitted. More intimate than physical contact. But it may be our only chance. A shudder ran through the station as the first weapon's impact hit. Alarms blared. We're out of time, Theron warned. Shields failing. Zoe made her decision. What do I do? Lyra took her hands, guiding her to stand face to face in the center of the chamber. Clear your mind. Focus on me, on my voice. Lyra's blue markings began to pulse more rapidly, growing brighter until they almost hurt to look at. The crystalline structures around them resonated in response, filling the chamber with harmonic tones that seemed to penetrate Zoe's very cells. Now, Lyra whispered, remember the sleeping bag. Remember the connection we felt. Zoe closed her eyes, recalling the warmth, the strange intimacy of that night. Lyra's hands tightened on hers. Open your mind to me, Zoe Nakamura. And I will open mine to you. The world dissolved around them. Zoe felt herself falling, or perhaps floating, through a space that wasn't physical. Colors she had no names for washed over her consciousness. Emotions that weren't hers, weren't human, flowed through her mind. Knowledge, memories, an entirely different way of perceiving reality. Lyra? She thought, suddenly afraid. I'm here. The response wasn't words but a presence, comforting and familiar despite its alienness. Don't fight it. Let the resonance build. Zoe surrendered to the experience, letting Lyra's consciousness intermingle with her own. She saw the Lumina homeworld through Lyra's eyes, breathtaking crystal cities that sang with light. She felt the deep connection Lyra had shared with her father, the grief of his loss, the determination to continue his work. And Lyra was experiencing her memories too, her childhood on Earth, her years at the academy, the loneliness of command, the yearning for something more meaningful than following orders. The resonance built between them, amplified by the chamber, expanding outward in waves of energy that penetrated the station's walls, reaching toward the attacking ships. Zoe felt the shock and resistance of the purists as the resonance field touched them, their closed minds fighting against the connection. Lyra's consciousness pressed harder, urging Zoe to help. Together, they pushed through the resistance, forcing a connection where none was wanted. See, Lyra's thoughts commanded. See what you fear. Images flowed from Zoe's mind, humanity's resilience, its creativity, its capacity for growth and change. Not as threats but as mirrors to the Lumina's own ancient past, before isolation had calcified their society. From Lyra came visions of what could be, Lumina and humans working together, each species complementing the other's strengths, creating something greater than either alone. The resonance peaked, a blinding surge of energy that made the entire chamber vibrate. Then, suddenly, silence. Zoe opened her eyes to find herself still standing in the chamber, Lyra's hands gripped tightly in hers. The alien woman's markings were glowing with unprecedented brilliance, no longer just blue but shifting through multiple spectrums of light. Did it work? Zoe asked, her voice hoarse. Theron rushed in, their green markings pulsing with astonishment. The purest ships. They've powered down their weapons. They're requesting to speak with the daughter of the first resonator. Lyra's knees buckled, and Zoe caught her, supporting her weight. They felt it, Lyra whispered, exhaustion evident in her voice. They couldn't resist the truth. Hours later, after negotiations Zoe only partially understood, she found Lyra in the observation lounge, gazing at the nebula outside. The purists have agreed to escort us to Vega Station, Lyra said without turning. Their leaders will join the discussion about the future of Lumina leadership. Just like that? Zoe asked, skeptical. One forced mind meld and they change years of deeply held beliefs? Lyra smiled, turning to face her. Not completely. But enough to create doubt, to open a door to dialogue. She took Zoe's hands, her markings pulsing gently. What we shared in the resonance chamber, it changed them. It changed us too. Zoe nodded, still processing the lingering effects of their connection. She could still feel echoes of Lyra's consciousness, alien yet somehow familiar now. I have my own doubts, Zoe admitted. About what this means. For us. I know your thoughts now, Zoe Nakamura, Lyra said softly. As you know mine. The bond we've created cannot be broken by distance or time. I'm still human. You're still Lumina. Our worlds are very different. Yes, Lyra agreed. And that is precisely why we need each other. My father understood this. It's why he arranged for you specifically to transport me. What? Zoe stepped back in surprise. Your father chose me? Lyra nodded. He studied many potential guardians. Your psychological profile, service record, but most importantly, your capacity for connection. He knew we would resonate. So none of this was chance. Our meeting, the attack, the sleeping bag. The circumstances were not engineered, Lyra assured her. But the possibility was anticipated. Zoe should have felt manipulated, used. Instead, she felt something unexpected, a sense of purpose that had been missing from her life. What happens now? She asked. Now, Lyra said, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight from the viewport, I go to claim my birthright. And you? My orders were to deliver you to Vega Station, Zoe interrupted. After that. Lyra stepped closer, her markings brightening. After that, the Alliance will need an ambassador to the Lumina. Someone who understands us, who has experienced our consciousness. Me? Zoe laughed. I'm a transport pilot, not a diplomat. You are the first human to share consciousness with a Lumina, Lyra said seriously. That makes you uniquely qualified. Before Zoe could protest further, Lyra leaned forward and pressed her lips gently against Zoe's, a human gesture she must have learned from their shared consciousness. The contact sent a ripple of energy through Zoe's body, like the resonance chamber but more focused, more personal. When they separated, Lyra's markings were pulsing rapidly. Besides, she whispered, there are still many things about humans I wish to learn. And many things about the Lumina I wish to teach you. As the repaired Helios Dawn prepared to depart the sanctuary, escort ships now allies rather than enemies, Lieutenant Zoe Nakamura stood at the viewport, watching the nebula's swirling colors. The mission that had begun as a simple transport had transformed not just her career but her understanding of the universe and her place in it. And as Lyra joined her, their fingers intertwining, blue luminescence meeting human skin, Zoe realized that sometimes the most unexpected connections were the ones that changed everything. Ready for Vega Station? She asked. Lyra smiled, her markings pulsing in harmony with Zoe's heartbeat. Ready for whatever comes next.